You know, it's one thing to conquer a kingdom, but it's a whole other thing to actually rule it. So today, we're looking at what happens after the battle is won. We're going to break down how William the Conqueror didn't just win a war. Nope, he completely re-engineered the English government from the ground up. Let's get into it.
Okay, seriously, put yourself in his shoes for a second. It's 1066. You've just won the Battle of Hastings. And boom, suddenly, you're the king of a foreign land. That's the exact spot William, the Duke of Normandy, found himself in. And let me tell you, the fighting might have been over, but his biggest challenge, it was just getting started.
And what a challenge it was. Historians even have a name for it, the Conqueror's Dilemma. I mean, think about it. How do you impose your will on a huge, angry population when you've only got a pretty small group of your own Norman soldiers? This wasn't just some political puzzle. This was straight-up survival.
The situation he was facing was, frankly, a nightmare. Here he is, a French-speaking foreigner ruling over millions of Anglo-Saxons. He's massively outnumbered, surrounded by local nobles who absolutely despise him. And there's a constant threat of rebellion simmering just under the surface. And to top it all off, the old system was a mess, totally decentralized. There was no single lever of power he could just pull to control the whole country.
So what's a guy to do? Well, he brings in a completely radical new idea to England. An architecture of power, really, designed for total control. It's something we now call the feudal system, and it was a brilliant top-down structure that was going to change absolutely everything.
So the core idea here is deceptively simple. You can think of it like a giant pyramid scheme, but for loyalty. Instead of money, the real currency of power was land. And the price you paid for that land was your absolute, unwavering loyalty and a promise to fight for the king whenever he called.
And the whole thing, the entire system, rested on this one incredibly audacious principle. Every single inch of England, from the tiniest farm to the biggest estate, now technically belonged to just one person, King William. By making that rule, he made himself the source of all wealth and all power. And here's the kicker. If you wanted to be somebody, if you wanted land, you had to get it from him, period.
And here's how that pyramid was actually built. Okay, so at the very top, you've got William. He owns it all. He then grants these huge chunks of land, they were called fiefs, to his most trusted Norman barons. In return, those barons had to pledge loyalty and promise him a certain number of soldiers. Then, the barons would give out smaller pieces of their land to their knights in exchange for military service. And way down at the bottom, you have the Anglo-Saxon peasants, working the land for everyone else. They didn't own a thing, they just got protection. It was a perfect chain of obligation, and every link led right back up to the king.
Right, so having a great idea for a system is one thing, but actually making it work, that's a whole other ballgame. William needed a tool, sort of an instruction manual for his new kingdom, and that tool was the Doomsday Book.
This was truly revolutionary. I mean, nothing like this had ever been tried on this scale in England before. The best way to think about it is like the world's most ambitious audit mixed with a national census. William literally sent his men out to every single corner of his new kingdom to find out exactly what he now owned.
The sheer number here is just hard to wrap your head around. Over 13,000 settlements were recorded. And this wasn't some vague overview either. This was a granular, village-by-village accounting of his entire realm. The scale alone is just staggering for its time.
But it's the detail they recorded that made this so incredibly powerful. It wasn't just about who owned what. No. They counted everything. People, plows, meadows, mills, even the pigs. So why? Well, for taxes, for sure. But it was also a tool of psychological dominance. By knowing everything about everything, William wasn't just auditing his kingdom. He was sending a message to every single person in it. This all belongs to me now. And comparing the land's value before and after 1066, that was his personal scorecard, a way to measure just how successful his takeover had been.
So, you had the feudal system as the blueprint and the Doomsday Book as the database. With those two things, William basically forged an entirely new government from scratch. And the results, they were immediate and they were dramatic.
England was just transformed. It went from being a loose collection of powerful, semi-independent regions run by local earls to a highly centralized state where all power flowed directly from the king. Loyalty wasn't local anymore. It was sworn straight up the chain to the crown. It was, for all intents and purposes, a total political reset.
And the most brutal, direct consequence of that reset is laid bare right here in this chart. Within just 20 years, the native Anglo-Saxon ruling class was pretty much wiped out and replaced. Land, the source of all power, was transferred wholesale to William's Norman followers. This wasn't just a change in leadership, it was a complete and total takeover.
And the effects of this government revolution, they weren't temporary. This wasn't some flash in the pan. William's new architecture of power fundamentally and permanently remade the entire nation.
You know, that legacy is everywhere, even today. The French-speaking court, it pumped thousands of new words for things like law, food, and government into the English language. The Norman obsession with centralized authority, it laid the groundwork for the English common law system, which is still used in countries around the world. Their massive stone castles and cathedrals physically changed the landscape. Many are still standing today as a testament to their power. And of course, that model of a strong central monarchy would define English government for centuries.
So let's end with a final thought to chew on. That incredible survey, created over 900 years ago, not just to count people, but to value and control an entire nation. Could it actually be the ancestor of every national census we see today? It's a powerful reminder that the systems we